Howdy, Humanities 2, Shasta College. How was your weekend? You do anything interesting? Did you get my last assignment? I posted it on Friday. It'll be due next Friday. Essay 4 on music. Watch the documentaries in the usual spot on Canvas, on Mozart and on Beethoven. Watch them both. Um, one's longer than the other. Sorry about that, but that's how it rolls. Um, and write your next essay on either one, not on both. Choose one. 3 to 5 pages, the usual length. And I want you to analyze why they mattered through that documentary and through your whatever research you do. And why they mattered is not so much where they were born and what their families were like, but what the music they created, why it mattered. So if you just focus on the music, that will be good because that's why they matter. And that's why they still matter. That's why we're still listening. Why thousands of musicians been influenced by these people. I don't need a review, whether you like it or not. I don't need you to like them. I just need you to learn about them and try to understand why they matter. And please, minimum 3 pages. I'm still giving lots of point loss out there for less than 3 pages. Keep pushing forward. If you run into a roadblock, like what do I write next? Well, look at the man's life. Look at some aspect of a piece of music they wrote or some uh, aspect of their lives that resonate and write about that for a couple paragraphs or however long it takes. And it shouldn't be that hard. Remember, thousands of pages have been written about both of these men. Movies have been made about both of these composers. So surely you could come up with 3 pages. That's the last I'll talk about that. Also, hope keeping up in your journals. One journal entry for all the weeks we're here, 17 weeks. What we did that week, Monday through Friday, usually. What my lectures were trying to convey, what the book is trying to convey, what the videos are trying to convey, what you experienced. That's the reflection part, how you felt about it, what you got out of it, if anything. Paragraph or two each week. Put them in a folder and upload them. Not due till the last week of school, so don't worry about it yet. I would keep up on it like a journal, like a diary every day or once a week at least. Take notes or you'll forget. Don't try to wait to the last minute and when it's due, try to recall what went on. That's not going to make it. I could tell. And if you miss a couple days, out sick, these fires we just had, I know some of you were evacuated. I know some of you have been ill with the COVID. Just say I missed it. If you missed quite a few, classes or entire weeks, you will lose points on the journal. Do your best to keep up with it. We're into at least our 5th week of school, and so we should be kind of up to speed on everything. Meaning you have the textbook. I want you to read chapters 27 and 28. We're coming into the industrial age. We're coming into America. We're coming into what might be phrased, coined as modern times. Not there yet, but we're getting there. Industrial age is happening. This is an area of 1778 or so to about 1880 or thereabouts. I know you're probably thinking this is a history class. Well, in a way it is, but it's history through the humanities and the art. I'm not talking about so much more that was making history at this time, like our revolution and or civil wars. We will mention that, but the humanities part that we're trying to get through that's in the book is the what makes each of these decades matter and how they led to our current times. Always look what's going on in the culture at the time, just like you would now. Tell me what's going on in the culture now, and how it reflects on movies and music and art and philosophy and poetry and literature. So now we're getting to this area they're calling it the romantic view of nature because nature is out there more than ever before, not like now. We don't have any climate change or pollution. Nature's pretty pure at this time. We haven't oversettled everything. There's not overpopulation. And so there's some great, incredible, not just beauty, that's a physical beauty, but an understanding of what the importance of nature. How many here go for walks out in the woods, not the river trail, not a concrete strip of walking, a sidewalk out in the woods? That's not what I'm talking about. Who gets out into the actual wilderness? Go up and explore a creek. Who goes out and skis or goes to the high desert or goes to the beach? And I don't mean just a party and have a cocktail. I mean actually feel it. Try to understand the nature around us. Do you think we're losing that in the way we live with in our cars all the time, getting our to-go food, our to-go coffee? We never get out of our cars, drive up window Starbucks. I see it every single day. People don't even want to get out of the car to walk in the store. It's too much bother. Is it too much nature? We have our iPods plugged in. We're listening to music, talk radio, podcasts, anything to keep out the natural sounds of the world. What are the natural sounds of the world? Can we hear it anymore over the din of autos and music playing and podcasts and YouTube and everything else? Like right now, for example, nature, it's starting to rain and you can smell it in the air. Can you imagine? It's raining now, a little. And it's cooled way off. Last week, we still had 100 degrees. This week, today, I think the high was 73. So nature is changing all the time. Are we changing with it? Do we pay attention to it? Is it a nuisance because you have to dress differently because it's a little chilly? Like today, I got my coat on. Last week, I had the air conditioner blasting. We're all victims or participants in nature. Do you get on your bike? Do you ride a bicycle? I do. And sometimes that's the only form of meditation I get. I used to ride with my iPod in my earphones. The music helped me get up hills. I'd listen to some Nirvana or the Replacements or listen to Williams, and it would depend on the ride. If it was a flat ride, it would be more mellow music. If I needed something heavy to get me up a hill, a more of aggressive ride, I'd put on something more aggressive. Screaming Trees. You even know who these bands are from the 90s. Um, it would motivate me to get up the hill. I stopped doing that because I was just flooding my mind with constant sound all the time. Then I couldn't hear what was going on around me. I couldn't hear a car if they honked at me or someone screamed an obscenity at me or whatever. So it's good to keep a ear and an eye on the nature around us. I should make you guys go take a walk this weekend and write about it, but I'm not going to. Tell me we see, smell, and hear. Are you scared of nature? Are you scared of the unpredictability of nature? What might be out in nature? Is nature out to get us? We do have accidents. This time in the history of this class and this era, nature is very much a part of everyone's lives. This is before supermarkets, before Costco. They had to kill their own food, folks. Yes, they raised it, but they had to go out there and wring the chicken's neck. They had to slaughter the cow that probably had a name. It's not pretty. That's how they did it, folks, before we got mass farming and it's all hidden from us. Mostly the food we buy right now is hidden from us. We don't know where it comes from. We figured if it's a tomato, it's grown somewhere, but do we really know where? Inside, outside, bunch of pesticides, even though it might say organic, hydroponic. What kind of tomato is it? Has been altered by modern science. Same with the meat. They feed steroids to cattle to pump them up fat in an unnatural way. It's not muscle fat. It's not muscle because they're not free roaming usually. Some do. Same with, you've seen the labels, free range chickens. What does that mean? Well, it means they get to walk around a bit. They get to actually have some kind of quality of life. Do you believe animals should have a quality of life? Or are they there just for us to survive with, to graze on? Do they feel pain? Do you even think about this stuff? Well, during this era, poetry was being written. Painters like such as Turner was painting these incredible uh, pastoral paintings that are still hugely influential to this day, um, of harbors. He was a British painter. People walking in the woods, very detailed. I would call them cinematic, which is a fancy word for looks like a movie. This is long before photography came into being and movies. And so much of the painting history of our painting history, and I haven't begun to cover it. I haven't done modern painters yet. We're going to get to that. Yes, we'll get to Van Gogh, Picasso, and Andy Warhol, but not yet. They were painting like the Vermeer paintings you saw. They look like still shots from a movie. The lighting coming in from the window, the mysterious girl with the pearl earrings peering out. What is she thinking? Her expression on her face. Movie. And that's why people are so fascinated by it. You can look at it and interpret it. You can perhaps see what she's thinking or put your own thoughts in there. That's why you relate to it. That's why some painters we don't relate to, and some we do. Same with poetry, same with literature. Why do we respond to some piece of writing, a poem by William Blake, and a poem by somebody else we don't respond to, because all writers are, are writing for themselves. They're not writing for you. Maybe you need to write for you. Maybe that's the answer. But when you do find a writer that you relate to, or uh, there is a connection to that writer, to how you feel in the world, what you're, how you feel, how you look at the world. All my life, I've had my favorite musicians, my favorite writers, favorite painters, composers, because somehow they've connected what they're doing to how I view the world, feel in the world, think about the world. And that's the human connection that keeps us all connected. Whether we're here in California, or you're in Israel, or you're in South America, or you're in Asia, or you're in Africa, or you're at the Arctic Circle. How can that be? How can we all be connected? How can people in Northern California be connected to somebody in Africa? How's that possible? Well, we're all born, we eat, we sleep, we love, we hate, we see things, we believe certain ways. Our life, our culture shapes us, and a strange culture that's totally alienated to our culture can shape a very similar person. How is that possible? Well, that's the beauty of the humanities that connects us all. We're not that much different. We just happen to be living in a different place. We just were raised in a culture that is alien to us. But there's a commonality. We could sit down with somebody from Africa or Asia or South America, and we could have a beer with them, and we'd probably have a good time, even though we don't know the language. How many here have traveled abroad, left the country? Have you ever been in a place where nobody speaks English? It's rare, because we're the only country that only speaks English, and we barely know how to speak our own language. You go to some foreign country, anywhere, Europe, South America, Asia, Japan, and you can just find English being spoken just about everywhere. That's the arrogance of Americans. We expect everybody to speak English, but we don't speak it. We don't speak Greek or Italian or Portuguese or Chinese or Japanese. Maybe you do. You're an exception. So, in this area of the book, in chapter 27, I'll talk about chapter 28 later this week. Um, there's this big historical revolution happening through the arts, because we're coming into modern times. We now have the printing press. We now have flush toilets. Some people have flush toilets. Most people are still going in. It is. Bicycles are starting to get people off horseback. Our beast of burden suddenly, which is horses, mules, donkeys, oxen, we could suddenly propel vehicles other ways. We're not there yet, but we're starting to get there with the steam engine and ships, the train, just percolating. We're on the verge of a lot of breakthroughs. For example, we're now, because more people than ever history before can read and write, we have more books published. Because we have the printing press, we can do mass production. Remember last week I talked about the new translation of the King James Bible? That came about because more people know how to read, not just scholars and monks. And the printing press, you can actually print out copies of the thing and spread it all over the world. Before, it had to be handwritten, usually by monks. Painstakingly, each copy had to be handwritten. Not so much anymore. So there's this new idealism that Hegel, a philosopher, German philosopher, spoke about. Now, this is Germany 100 years before Hitler, but it's still Germany. And the roots of Hitler is everywhere to be found. But a guy like Hegel had this new thing, this dialectic of philosophy we called absolute idealism. Wow, absolute idealism. Think about that. Idealism, folks, the ideal. Is it possible? Do you all have ideals? Do you think about that stuff? Well, they were thinking about this stuff. Idealism is sort of a romantic notion of how we can conduct our lives in a good way, civilized way, an educated way, a thoughtful way. Absolute idealism. That's pretty hardcore. It's punk rock. Before punk rock. Before the rock. There's always been punks. Mozart was a punk, folks. Van Gogh was a punk, no matter what you say. Picasso was definitely a punk. And they changed the world. We need punks to change the world, not just the Sex Pistols. So, during this time, religion was it's always getting a major overhaul. Somebody in the name of Charles Darwin wrote his revolutionary book on the origins of species. What is that? Evolution. By studying nature, by going to the Galapagos Islands where he discovered ancient species of Komodo dragons and gigantic turtles and everything else, and they had no fear of man because they weren't hunted. They had no fear of man as a predator, like most animals should have. And you could walk right up to these things and touch them. And he was wondering, what is going on here? By discovering these incredible species on this island that nobody ever seen before, it's off the coast of South America, if you're interested. He wrote an entire philosophy of life of the origins of man, how we were originated in the sea, not in the Garden of Eden. And then how we mutated from the sea, and how certain species developed in order to live on land. They could breathe on land. They could walk. And then they developed into thinking creatures like a monkey who could actually use tools to think, to have a social order. And so his idea was that man was developed from the ape, and that went against Christianity, who felt that man was created by a god, not by millions of years of evolution. The debate was on, and it's still going on. Early 19th century thought, creationism versus evolution. There are still people debating this. I suggest you read up on both of them, make your own choice. During this time, also, and please, if you read this chapter, it'll go into more detail that I'm going into. I'm not going to read the chapter to you. Then we have this huge influx of poets, and a lot of it was nature based. Wordsworth, I can't, if we were in class right now, we'd be reading some of this stuff out loud, but it's looks like page 215 I've written there. Yeah. And Shelley and Keats, William Blake, these are revolutionary poets. Yes, poetry was that important. It was a form of literary thinking and expression. Shakespeare did poetry. It's been around a long time. But now there's this revolution, this flourishing of romantic poets that we're still quoting to this day, and you'd be surprised. You might not know these poets, but you probably have heard their words somehow in our lexicon. I'm going to probably assign a documentary to, so be looking for that after this lecture. Oh, then we had the Americans were coming into play. Guys like James Fenimore Cooper, who wrote Last of the Mohegans, novelist, about the American frontier, the West, as he called it, which was really New York State. They hadn't gone too far west when he was writing. He had no idea about the West, the real West, but it was west of Washington, and that's how they considered the West. Edgar Allan Poe was starting to write. You maybe have heard of him. He wrote Gothic poetry and short stories, Pit and the Pendulum. A lot of horror writers like Stephen King would be nowhere without Edgar Allan Poe. He's the granddaddy of that sort of genre. And it's not horror like a monster chasing you with a big knife and a ski mask on. It's more of the horror of who we are, the mystery that's out there. And it's mysterious. We don't know. We don't know everything there is to know. Why do so many people believe in a God? Or not? We don't have all the answers. But life is all about searching for an answer you can live with. And guys like Edgar Allan Poe presented an outlook, a darker outlook on our man's humanity. And some of it's not pleasant. All you have to do is look at the Holocaust or look what happened in Afghanistan or so many other places. The inhumanity to man is epic. And American writers like Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick. I challenge you to read one page of Moby Dick. You probably heard about it. sea captain's obsessed with a white whale who supposedly is responsible for his missing leg and his obsession with chasing this mythical creature out there. You know how many movies have been based on that? Not literally based on it, but the metaphor of chasing the myth that may or may not exist. You've seen it in a million movies. Game of Thrones, if you read that, it's you're reading the Greeks. We're always chasing something, and it's just out of reach. That's on 225 in the book. That's as far as I'm going right now in the book, because I still want to keep talking about music. We're going to do another whole section in music. We're coming to the modern world, not yet. Towards the end of the class, we're not done with it by a damn sight. So, anyway, good luck on your essays. I'm almost done with the Dutch painters. I've got about 20 more essays, hopefully done in 2 days. Hope you're doing okay out there. If you are having trouble uploading your essays, let me know. And then you can email me. Some of you have. I know some of you had to vacate for the fires. That's fine. It's okay to be late. Just let me know. It's okay to get sick. Just give me a heads up. That's it. That's all I got for you today. I'll see you in a couple days where the story of our humanities continues.